And in today's video, I wanted to talk about emotional mastery and obviously the three best rules to help control your emotions. And I had asked a question over the weekend, as I'm recording this on the Monday, about if you were to have a coffee and sit down with me, what questions would you want to ask? And one of the questions that I was asked was, where do I get my confidence from? And I think obviously I alluded to the fact that it is to a certain extent, I'm comfortable in my own skin. Um, I do have my good and bad days like everybody, which is understandable. And I think that in a nutshell is one example. But in this video, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as to what you can do to actually control your emotions and so they don't get the better of you be in a state of anger, sadness, generally the more negative ones, because when you're happy, everything is kind of sunshine and roses. So I'll get straight into it because that's what everybody's waiting for. Obviously, everybody knows the saying, it can take a lifetime to build an empire, but a day to destroy it. Another saying is Rome wasn't built in a day. But when it comes to emotional mastery and actually being in control with your own emotions, which I don't think people are totally aware of, is that your emotional state is who you are. It's not, you don't necessarily are the individual at that particular time. It's your actual emotional state reacting to that scenario, be it you've been frustrated, you've been annoyed, you've had a sense of, if I look from the positive side of it, had a good experience, and it's that's actually controlling your behavior. And if you go a step further in terms of coming back to the example that I use, but people say that I'm very confident or I come across very confident. Well, that's because in most senses I respond to the state that I'm in as opposed to react. And you could call it being proactive as opposed to reactive as well, because obviously I'm aware of the situation either escalating, or in this sense I'll use de-escalating, because be it I might get annoyed and I want to calm the situation down. That's me being proactive as opposed to being reactive and having to employ a system where I'm retrospectively trying to sort the situation out. So if we go a little bit further in terms of like the actual psychology behind it, it's actually where your emotions stem from is, as human beings, we have a perception of our identity. So it's not a case of you believe to, and if I use language going across the line, that I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, etc., etc., etc. And I've talked about this on many occasions, be it not, maybe not on Facebook Live, but in podcasting as well. If you use that rhetoric over and over again, you're going to start to believe it. So in effect, it's hardwired into us as individuals, that the perception that we have of ourselves, we then make it to become our behaviors that we're going to follow suit. So it's a sense of, and it goes vice versa. So I'm trying to explain this. So the behaviors then become consistent with our perceptions of our identity. So be it you believe that you cannot, I'll come back to obviously my field of expertise. If you feel that you can't lose weight, your behavior is going to go congruent with that, because obviously you dictate that I can't achieve it, so I'm going to do behaviors that are congruent with me to quote unquote fail. And obviously vice versa, you've stuck in a behavior and a habit, you then have a perception of that of yourself, be it vis-a-vis self-esteem, self-confidence, our all-time low, like kind of rock bottom. So they all go hand in hand with each other, in terms of having that emotional sense. But obviously, how do you fix it? It is not in simplistic terms. It's obviously responding versus reaction, like I said. We all make mistakes. I'm no different. I did it 2, 3 years ago. Started out on a job within education and did all the wrong things in terms of my nutrition, because I was trying to quote unquote survive just to get through the day, of the work life, of be it, the stress I'm dealing with other human beings, and obviously human beings of teenage years, which can be difficult, and we've all been there and been them myself, so we know that we were sometime or the other. So it's very difficult. Obviously, that was me being reactive to the situation, as of being responsive and being aware of being a little bit more congruent of obviously my identity now as a coach. I'm aware of, if I go off the wagon, what do I need to come back on track? Whereas then I knew it was not a good thing in the short term, but I didn't do anything about it. So it became a little bit more of a problem, and then exemplified and magnified to things that were even worse, be what I talked about with mental health. So it kind of spiraled out of control just from that sense of identity and how I fitted in because of what happened with sport and things like that, and going down a career path that necessarily I didn't want to do. But that's something for another day. But the last and final point of this video is obviously the three rules that you need to employ to obviously elicit these becoming a problem in the first place. So the first one is physiological. So being aware of your body and your breathing. This has become very, very big business within meditation, mindfulness, etc. Being kind of at one with your breathing and recognizing when you're in a sense of distress. I'm not going to say stress in terms of that way, but your breathing is becoming accelerated. You're aware that that's not normal. What do I need to do to calm the situation down? Be the same thing you could do if you got frustrated. If you are aware of your breathing rhythm, I'll call it. It's probably not the right word, and you'd be able to adjust that. The second one I touched upon was obviously the language you're describing and labeling towards that experience or yourself. That you obviously have to, that's probably, I would say it's the easy one of the two, but that's going to either come down to the individual themselves. And then the final point of them all is obviously to focus on the moment and focus in the present. Yes, it's more difficult than it sounds, because ultimately, if we go back to videos that I've talked about in the past, from a psychological state of mind, when you've got issues with the past, it's generally associated with depression. And then obviously when you are apprehensive or a little bit scared of the future, it's to do with anxiety. And until we get rid of probably that stigma completely, that you can look back in the past with no dread and fear, ultimately I think people are a little bit more wary of depression than anxiety, because you need anxiety just to function anyway, because you wouldn't cross the road if it wasn't for anxiety, because you'd kind of go on one extreme, you wouldn't leave the pavement or the sidewalk, or you'd be very crazy and step out into the middle of the road when the red man was on the crossing to cross the road. So you can see the where it kind of goes into a nutshell. And then obviously it's remembering, and this is the take home for if you don't take anything from the entire video, and this is probably the best you could take from it, and how to regain your emotional control. It's remembering that you're in an emotional state at that particular moment in time. So it doesn't necessarily make any dent or inclination onto you at that particular time. but it's remembering it's just an emotional state and you can get over it. So I hope you enjoyed today's video.